Step back, puts up the three, got hit, shot's good, and one! James Harden double team, and a chance for a 4-point play.
Okay, welcome back to the DC pod. Got a special guest on today, Das. So as always, I'm Christian, alongside me, Darcy Emery, Dallas diehard. Now, I'll do some apologizing about Dallas in a sec, but we'll introduce our guest. So noted Golden State fan. Welcome to Benji. How are you, mate?
Yeah, very well, boys. Thanks very much for having me on. I've been listening to you guys pretty much since, I think, episode 1. And to be joining such a special episode today is pretty cool. So, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, of course. So we're going to break down the all-NBA team. So it's getting to the crunch time where, Darcy and I obviously love the playoffs. We love everything that comes with the NBA and the important season. Where things really kick off. So we had to bring on Benji, just another opinion to really embrace the debate. So we'll go through all three NBA teams and basically who we think should be in each spot, not necessarily what the outcome will be. Because knowing Darcy and I's track record with predictions, it's not the best. So don't hold us to it. And then we'll also go over the award winners for, I think it's the 5 awards. If it's MVP, Rookie of the Year, Sixth Man, Most Improved, and Defensive Player of the Year. So we will get cracking that. But the first thing I've got to say is on last week's pod, when we did play-in predictions and scenarios, I had Dallas sliding down to the 8th spot. So hand up, that was way off the mark. That was really bad because Dallas went on basically a really nice run the next, was it 3 or 4 games? We won't talk about Sacramento and how the fact you just can't beat them, but
bogey team.
They do seem to be your bogey team. But yeah, that was clearly way off the mark. You guys will definitely be a 5 at worst 6 seed. So yeah, first off, I apologize for that, Darcy. Is that what you wanted to hear?
I appreciate it, mate. I appreciate it. And it's just I've kept the faith with Dallas all season, and it is still incredibly close. So we're not out of the jeopardy of getting into that 7 and 8 playoff just yet. So I won't be parading around just yet until we make it into that playoffs, and then I'll be a happy man.
Yeah, well, Portland have gone on a little bit of a run themselves. They found themselves on that road trip, right? They hammered the Pacers, beat Brooklyn,
killed
Boston. And they slipped up today against Atlanta. But, I mean, for the most part, they've done their job on this road trip anyway. I'm not sure if they get to head back home soon.
When Gallinari hits 7 threes, Atlanta are tough to beat.
Yeah, when those sort of games happen. Well, the last time I think something like that happened was they played Boston a while ago, right? And
he hit 10.
He just blew them off the court. So that's the real luxury of having a guy like him and Lou Will coming off the bench, right? Lou Will just beat the Bucks by himself the other day off that 4th quarter stretch. So that does happen. Benji, we'll do a quick Golden State check-in. How do you feel about where you guys sit heading into, the last 10 days, 2 weeks?
Yeah, look, last 10 days, I guess, have been interesting. It probably summarizes our season, to be completely honest. It's been a little bit up and down. But look, I like particularly what I saw today. The guys were really throwing the ball around well against New Orleans. And when you've got Draymond Green playing the way he did today, I'm not sure if you guys saw it, was unbelievable. When he plays like that with Steph, I really like what we're doing. So coming into the playoffs, it's interesting. I'm a play-in skeptic, I suppose, but now I'm sort of coming around to it thinking that, hey, I could get a Warriors-Memphis game and see Steph go for 60, maybe, possibly 50 in a playing game. I think that's pretty cool. I think that's what the fans want to watch. So, yeah, I like what I'm seeing. 10 more games. It's crazy how it's all coming down to the last 10 games. It's sort of what I'm loving about this season. So let's see what sort of form we can carry in. And, yeah, keen to see us in a playing game. It'll be interesting.
Well, I know a lot of people have thrown out as of late, how far could the Lakers slide? Could we see a Lakers Golden State play-in game? Of course, LeBron comes out and says that whoever came up with the play-in should be fired now that the Lakers are looking like they'll be in it. And, every team is going through that. It's only an issue when your team is close to being in this situation. I know, speaking on Darcy's Mavericks, I know Cuban and Carlisle, potentially Doncic, weren't happy about it when you guys were slipping. Oh, how long was this ago, Darcy? 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago? Yeah. So it's only an issue when your team's
And
close to it. But I mean, if it's a Lakers Golden State playing game, and I don't think it will be, but if it is, shouldn't the person that came up with the playing game get a raise, not get fired?
for sure. Yeah, I'm for that. I think, it's funny when LeBron comes out and says the stuff he did today around how, I think people forget, right? This was unanimously voted yes, right? So for now, the 6, 7, 8 seeds to come out and sort of say that they're not about it, I think that was always inevitable, right? And we won't know until we see one how it pans out, which is cool. And that's what I think the fans want.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm super pumped. I know Dallas. I know Darcy is in particular. I think he knows the Mavs aren't out of the woods yet, but I think still the prospect of being involved in a game like that, anyways, is pretty exciting. And it's pretty boring for Memphis. Speaking about another team that's on the edge there, how they've gone the last couple of days, dropping that game to your boy Das, your favorite Cole Anthony, and then backing it up today with it wasn't the best showing against the Knicks, to be honest, and it ended with the coach getting ejected. Ja Morant got ejected. So I don't know. I think they play great as an underdog, but I don't think they play well as a favorite. How do you feel about Memphis, Das?
I think, it is quite concerning because they'd had a good month and they were surging in the right kind of direction. And I guess it just kind of proves that they're a young team. And when it comes to a playing game, they had that experience last year against Portland, but they did get beaten in that game. And I'm almost definitely not going to pick them if they're in a playing game, not just because I don't think they're good enough, but they haven't proven enough to me. So we talk about all the time how they rely on guys like Dylan Brooks. Like he actually had a really good game, and so did Kyle Anderson. But if Ja isn't the guy for them in clutch moments, then who is? I'm not really sure. So I'm not sure if I trust Dame over some of the other superstars that they could be matching up against in the play-in, like Curry. If the Lakers drop down, I don't think Memphis stand a chance against them, and I would back my Mavericks against them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, that's exciting. We'll definitely keep a track of that as things come to a close to finish out this regular season. But all NBA, so we may as well just get started. So basically, there's going to be 6 forwards, 6 guards, 3 centers to fill out the first, second, and third team guys. So should we just go through it by team, or should we attack it through position, or how would you guys prefer to do it? Das, what do you think?
I think we should go team by team. We'll see.
Okay.
We'll say who we've all got in our first team, and then we'll debate kind of where we're at that standing. So maybe I'll go off and lead the way.
Yeah.
Put something out first. A big surprise pick in the guard spot for the first team All NBA, Luka Doncic. My other guard spot in the All NBA first team is Steph Curry, and then in the forwards I've got Giannis. My second forward, which might cause a bit of controversy, is I reckon Julius Randle has earned a spot on the All NBA first team. And then my center, this is the worst position of all, is Jokic for sure. But that's just what I hate about the positions, because Embiid should be All NBA first, but I don't have him in. I've got Jokic instead.
Interesting. Ben?
Yeah, look, pretty much the same team. I think the only difference really is I had Kawhi first team. I think that's a tough one. That's probably the one I tussled over the most. But I think what the Clippers have done this year is probably a little bit underrated. I still feel like they have that moniker of being a bad boy team. They've had some pretty average stretches, right? George out for a while, Kawhi out for a while. So, I think it's a tough one. But with Kawhi, sort of leading that team when he is on, and his numbers, right, are still pretty phenomenal. You can't downplay, when he's playing, he's going to get his. I think the other thing when it comes down to this is games missed, right? It's going to be a huge factor. I think I'd like Kawhi in there.
Kawhi's only played 47 games, and you got him in All NBA.
Yeah, I've got him in All NBA first. If you're implying that you don't have him at all, that's I don't know. That could be interesting. But look, I reckon Kawhi in the first team along, with Giannis, Jokic, Doncic, and Curry. I don't think there's too much talk around Curry and Doncic being the guards. I think that's a lock almost.
Yeah, so mine rank very similar. So it's Curry, Doncic for the backcourt. Jokic takes center. Giannis gets one of the forward spots, but my last forward, I've given it to LeBron. So you look at similar to what you were talking about, Ben, with the games missed. Now Kawhi and LeBron actually, well, before LeBron rolled his ankle or whatever he did the other night again, it was going to turn out to be pretty similar in terms of games played, probably around that early 50s mark for both. So when just comparing then to production, LeBron takes the cake for me. I mean, he was performing pretty much ridiculously. You think, he's a 36-year-old guy, but he still is going to put up 25, 8 and 8 this season. He's attempting a career high 6 threes a game, shooting nearly 37% from deep. And he was carrying that Lakers group without AD there for I don't know how long the stretch was. It was at least a fortnight before he went injured against Atlanta. But yeah, I really wanted to put Randall in there. I really did. But I think first team's potentially just a little bit of a stretch too far. And looking at the alternate options, it probably was LeBron that came through in the end. But again, I wouldn't actually be mad, Das, if Randall came through and actually got the first team, because I think he's been so deserving, consistent. He's been available. You look at what that Knicks team is without Randall, and it's pretty ugly. I think they would be in the conversation one of the maybe one of the worst teams in the league's harsh, but they certainly
definitely
would struggle.
One of the least talented.
Yeah,
one of the least talented.
Yeah, exactly. And he plays huge minutes, Randall, as well in games. Like the leash that Thibodeau has with Toppin when Randall goes on the bench is very short. That is a very short leash. It's like 2 minutes into the second quarter. Toppin has a few turnovers, a few dumb plays. It's like immediately Randall off the bench, even though he played the whole first quarter. Like Tibbs doesn't care. So it's very impressive what Randall's been doing. I can't think if he's missed any games. I don't think he has.
64 straight games.
Okay, there you go. So he hasn't rested. He hasn't been injured. So it's hard to. And 24, 10 and 6. I'm making the case for him to be first team here, so I should really stop talking. But I've got him second team for the record. But for me, LeBron. So neither of you guys had LeBron. Is he a second teamer for you guys?
Absolutely, yeah. Second teamer for me. Okay. I think you're right with your skepticism about Randall. When you look at the kind of caliber of players in that first team, you wouldn't think that Randall would fit with those guys. And we can easily forget that the first third of the season, LeBron was by far and away the MVP and the best player. He was completely every team that came in to play the Lakers, he was shutting it down. He was absolutely killing them. I think you're splitting hairs between LeBron and Kawhi for the season, because as loud as the noise was for LeBron for MVP, you look down at Kawhi's numbers and, he's averaging the same amount of points, a couple less rebounds, a couple less assists, but he's got more steals and he's shooting the ball like even more efficiently than LeBron is. And he's not missing his free throws like LeBron is. So when you think about it like that, Kawhi does it in a quiet way, but you look up at the stats for the season and they're pretty freaking phenomenal, his line. LeBron and Kawhi for me, 43 games. So let's say LeBron, he set out today again, maximum he could get to is 50, and Kawhi maximum he could get to is about 53 games. Randall's already at 64. And I guess when I was thinking about all NBA teams, even though you want it to reflect the best 5 players in the league this season, it's a regular season award. And this regular season has been dominated by Randall. He's been there every single game. He's taken a team who everyone expected to be the basement team in the conference. And they're going to be a home court team in the playoffs. And if you try to tell me that it's for any other reason than his dominance on the court, then I won't believe you. I just think he's been that important. And for a regular season, first team All-NBA, I think he's deserving.
How do you feel, Ben?
I agree with all of that, right? I struggle to put Randall probably in the first team. That certainly makes a case for it. And look, I wouldn't be mad if he did make the first team. He's been that good. And to change that New York team around from the pits that they've been in over the last couple of years is really impressive. And look, he's deserving. I think the other thing I'll just quickly throw in is that it's going to be so important these last 10 games, right? Which has never been the case. Usually you've got these sort of teams locked away with probably 20 games to go in the season. That's why I think it's exciting. So look, if LeBron misses sort of the next, 8 to 10 games, right, and he misses all of their last games, I struggle to probably put him in that first team for that reason. So look, I went LeBron in the second team. I went Randall as well, right? So those are my forwards. Really curious, I guess, to see what you guys did with the guards, because I think from here on out, I think Curry, Doncic locks for the first team.
Mm-hmm.
From here on out, I think this is where it got so interesting, and I was tossing and turning over these guard spots, right? We've got 4 left and probably 10 guards that are deserving. So keen to hear what you guys are thinking on that front. I'll kick it off and just sort of say
please do.
Dame fills out one position, and CP I think is deserving of the second team.
Yep.
I've heard some talk that he might even get enough votes to be in first. I just don't see it happening over Curry and Doncic. But talking the durability point, I think he's only missed 3. He's literally turned that Phoenix team around from cellar dwellers to now top 2 seeds, possibly getting the first seed, right? And I think they're a huge chance to go to the finals. I really do. And for that reason, I think you've got to reward Chris Paul for coming in and, not just durability this year. The dude's 35, 36. I think people sort of always talk about LeBron's durability. I think people sort of forget about the fact that CP's that right there with him. So it's incredible. I think, CP and Dame for the guard spots.
Yeah, well, mine's exactly the same. It's identical. So it's Randall with the forward. The other forward is it's not, because I had LeBron first. So I have Randall, the forward spot. The other forward spot I have is Kawhi. Center's obviously the main man, Joel Embiid. 2 guard spots, then Lillard and Chris Paul. So Lillard has been a bit off as of late, but we can't forget about what he did when the Blazers didn't have Nurkic and CJ. He carried him on a nightly basis. It was basically him and Gary Trent and Cantor that were really the 3 guys that were doing all the heavy lifting on offense. They went 14-11 in 25 games that CJ was not playing, and it includes some statement wins. And I think the one thing that comes to mind is the game winner against Chicago. The team didn't play very well on the road. It looked like they were going to drop that one and start to go on a bit of a free fall, but they managed to come back, and Dame hit the game winner, falling basically out of bounds. So that really started them off on a good note and put them on a bit of a track. They took care of business against Darcy's Dallas team. They beat Philadelphia twice. They beat a few other teams that it was just where there was a real likelihood that they could just fall off a cliff. Dame was like, no, we can't drop off again. So that was most impressive to me. I think that basically cemented him in that sort of all NBA second team. And then what you say with Chris Paul, I sort of second that. Ben, I think he's been awesome. You obviously put him in the same category as LeBron with just the production, and he's doing it at the age he is. He's only missed 1 game, CP3. And I really love, as of late, he's been the man down the stretch. Like, I know Booker kind of took over against the Bucks in that game on the road, but you saw what CP3 did against the Knicks in the Garden, where he basically hit some ridiculous shots to really end the Knicks' dream run that they were on. And he did the same at home to the Clippers in a really important game. CP3 took over late. They had Morris switched onto him a lot, and Morris just couldn't contain CP3. He was doing whatever he wanted. So really stood out. That probably took the cake for me in terms of the Booker CP3 debate as to which guy from Phoenix would make it. But yeah, I think Chris Paul has been absolutely phenomenal in a season where we thought, I don't know if he can back it up, what he did in OKC. I think he's exceeded all our expectations.
I think you're absolutely right there. And Benji, you're absolutely right about the logjam of guards. This was a very, very difficult choice. On the first time I made my grouping together, I had Chris Paul in the first team All NBA. I think when you look at Doncic and him head to head, well, I've watched closely the matchups when we played them, and they've swept us this season. And Chris Paul has controlled that game. He's as good as anyone in the league at controlling the pace of the game and making sure his team's in a position where they can win. And yeah, he just makes so many winning plays. So the thing that kind of swung it a little bit towards Doncic over him was just the bulk of stats and the load that I suppose that Luka takes every night. I guess as important as Chris Paul is to winning, and he's as important as basically any player in the league for his team. But Doncic, Porzingis has missed a lot of time, and Doncic, he scores close to 30 points a game, racking up these rebounds and these assists, and everything is built around him. So to some extent, I guess the load that Luka carries and the way that he's been able to perform allowed him to get that number one spot over Chris Paul. But he's got to be the number one pick in the second team. I think Chris Paul, he's just been so important. They've got the second best record in the league, and there's no doubt that he's a huge part of that. Now, Dame was a tough guy for me to grade because you can easily forget, same with LeBron, that the first third of the season, he was a guaranteed first team All-NBA. Like, he was playing better than Steph at the beginning of the season. He was absolutely awesome. Yeah. And if you were to slag off Dame and not put him in your All-NBA team, then I can guarantee he would make some massive noise in the play-in or in the playoffs and just show you that you're completely wrong, because that's just the kind of player he is.
Respect.
He needs his respect. But for me, I actually went with Kyrie in the second team over Dame, and I'll tell you why. So Lillard's raw stats, absolutely awesome. He's played 60 games as opposed to Kyrie only playing 48, which is right on that threshold. I think if you're in the 40s for games, I think you're almost not playing enough to win. But the Brooklyn Nets are right now the fourth best record in the NBA. No one's, proven that they're able to destroy Brooklyn, or I don't think anyone wants to see them in a playoff matchup. So for them to not have anyone in the All-NBA first or second team just didn't make sense to me. I know Durant hasn't played many games this season. Harden was definitely going to be All-NBA before his injury, which has cost him a bunch of games because his stats are out of this world. But Kyrie, it seems like every time I chuck on a Brooklyn Nets game, he'll go through a stretch in a quarter where he scores 8 field goals in a row and just looks like no one can guard him. And it doesn't matter what team it is. And for me, that's kind of a sign of just how good he is and, how he is deserving of a spot on the All-NBA team. His numbers are super efficient, 26 points a game on 50% shooting. He's shooting 38% from three, 92 at the line, 5 rebounds a game, 6.5 assists, only 2.5 turnovers, and 1.5 steals. So even though he's only played 48 games, in those 48 games, he's been absolutely dominant, especially offensively. And I just give a little bit more of a push to him because his team's doing so well and they're cruising in the Eastern Conference. They have all season. And I guess it's just a little bit unfortunate for Lillard that he's, his team is still fighting to secure a spot in the playoffs. And that kind of gave Kyrie an edge for me. Like I said, I got LeBron and Kawhi in the second team just because of the amount of games they played. And it might not seem fair, but, they're in the 40s for games. So they're not up for me. And then we've all got Embiid as a center. We should say something about Embiid. 29 points a game, 11 free throw attempts, shooting 85%, 11 rebounds, 3 assists, a block and a steal. Yeah, he should be All-NBA first team, but it's just the way it works out. You can only have one center, and all of us going Jokic and Embiid.
Yeah, Ben, how do you feel about Das taking Kyrie?
Look, I think it's warranted. I had Kyrie in the third team, right? Yeah, and to Das's point, yeah, I think when you look at the fact that Brooklyn are possibly going to win the East, they're possibly going to make the finals if they can all get healthy. And from there, right, they could probably win it, right? I think there's still a very good chance. And I think you have to reward at least one of those guys. I've seen some All-NBA team Brooklyn Nets players in it, right? You factor in Harden's missed games, he's only going to play about 30, 35. Durant's missed a ton. And, Kyrie, I think, to Darcy's point, only missed 8 or 9. And his stats, like he's shooting 50% from the field, right? 92, 93% from the free throw line. He's great. That is impressive. So I think you have to have him in the All-NBA team, right? He's one of the best 15 players in the league. I don't think there's any doubt around that. So I had him in the third team. Tough between him and Dame, right? To Darcy's point. But yeah, I'm comfortable with Kyrie in the third team. We need a Brooklyn net somewhere in this, and I think it's Kyrie over the other two. One thing I'll just quickly say as well about the CP thing earlier, right? When you look at who I've sort of looked at guards for the third team, there's a plethora now, and it's going to be interesting to see who we all land on. But there's talk around Booker and whether or not he needs to be in this top 15. I think he's been on that same team. Granted, they've got a few different guys now, right? You're talking about, a couple of guys that got off the bench campaign, etc. So I think he's had this Phoenix team that hasn't really done much over the last couple of years. CP comes in, literally turns that franchise around. That's why you have CP. Certainly, it's interesting to see if you guys have Devin, but it probably leads me on to, I guess, that other guard spot in the third team, right? I had Kyrie. I tousled here really hard between Donovan and Devin Booker for that sixth guard spot. And I think I'm going to land on Donovan, just given what he's done at Utah. They're possibly going to be the first seed again. I think that matters. He's really stepped his game up to the point where he's the face of that franchise. Now it's almost been a little bit ambiguous over the last couple of years. They've been so well-rounded, but I think it's really his team now, and they're going to possibly have one of the best records in the league. His stats, much like Randall's, he's basically improved in every area. So I think you give it to Donovan over Devin here, but as mentioned, there's so many guards here. I'm looking at who I haven't mentioned, and there's some talent. So curious to see, I guess, where you guys landed with that sixth guard spot.
Well, I'm happy to take the lead here. I've gone Brad Beal. Pretty out there. Look, it actually came down to, if Harden played more games, I would have chucked Harden in there as well and been pretty comfortable with two Brooklyn Nets. I would have. Look, obviously the Houston thing's a bit of an issue, but if you look at how Harden was going for those 2 months, you could arguably say he was right in the MVP conversation there for a while with what he was doing on a nightly basis. So that's unfortunate. But yeah, Brad Beal, toss up between him and Russ. Russ has been unbelievable since the All-Star break, but I think Beal's been more consistent over the course of the season. And you can even span it back to last year as well, where he was doing this all on his own. Didn't get voted an All-Star, didn't make an All-NBA team. It was pretty crazy considering he had less to work with than now. So 31, 5 and 5 on 48% shooting from the field, gets a ton of attention. It's going to come down to, definitely the last game between him and Steph as to who gets the scoring title, because I'm pretty confident both those guys know about each other. So there's a real competitive, I think Steph wants it, so they'll be pushing each other right till the end, that's for sure. But yeah, I think the Beal factor's been overlooked. I understand that the Wizards have been straight garbage for the most part.
They're 10th seed.
But it's hard to put it to be able to defend that side of it in terms of the record. But if I want to look at the other guys and who I potentially could have put in there, as you say, whether it be a Donovan Mitchell or a Dev Booker, I was pretty comfortable in taking one Phoenix Sun in Chris Paul, and then I've already got Gobert in that third team. So the way Utah play, you see how they've been going. It's not the end of the world that Donovan Mitchell isn't in that lineup. They'll obviously need him for the playoffs when things get tight and in crunch time. But for the most part, I'm pretty happy to leave him out there. But yeah, Beal for me stands out. It would have actually been between Beal and Russ. If Russ was doing this from the start of the year, it's pretty hard to leave him out completely. So it's a little bit of too little too late. But yeah, Brad Beal for me. But I understand the criticism of that pick.
Crazy to think about where Westbrook has come from, from us talking about how his Rust ball is not going to work and how Washington are basically just traded for some absolute rubbish and they're going to be worse than they were last year almost, to, he's playing some inspired basketball. Some of those stat lines, he's putting up 20 assists in games, getting close to 20 rebounds. There was a stage about a month ago where he was just averaging 15, 15 and 15, like just with ease. And now that they start winning games, he's been awesome. So,
but he has the takeover ability as well as of late. Like Beal wasn't that good against you guys. It was Westbrook that was just relentless.
40,
just assault.
He's really up to his scoring.
Yeah, definitely.
When we look back at his career and the stats, Westbrook, he's a different beast.
Yeah.
I sent around an interview the other week. It's Russ after a game, and they tell him, right, one of the reporters, they're like, Russ, you actually lead the league in clutch field goal percentage, right? Last 5 minutes of the fourth quarter, who leads the league in field goal percentage? It's Russ.
Wow.
Which I think is crazy. And He knew it. He knew it. It's a great video clip, but they asked him, "Did you know that?" And he goes, "No, but he knew. He knew. He's tracking that." So, yeah, tough to leave Russ out given what he's done. But I mean, this is what I talk about, right? Too many guards and only limited spots. You've really got to narrow it down to specifically this year, how long they've played for, what they're doing with their teams. To Darcy's point, 10th seed. I think it's hard to get him in. But yeah, I'd probably prefer Beal over him, to be honest, much like you, Chris. I think Beal is probably the leader, or at least has led that team in probably most part of the season, whilst I think Russ has been a great leader for them. It's really those two. No wonder Beal's averaging 30, right? Who else is taking shots in that team besides those two?
Yeah, I don't have the stats for it as well, but I'm almost certain that still, even after what's been going on the past month, 6 weeks with Russ, that the Wizards are still better with Russ off the court than on. I'm pretty certain about that with regards to, you know, win percentage and they have actually improved defense recently, but I'm pretty sure, without having the stats handy, that that's still the case. So just to sort of put another tick next to Beal's name, that'd be something I'd throw out as well.
Which is crazy if Westbrook is leading the league in clutch field goal percentage. There's some things on that team that still don't really make sense.
For sure. It's Washington, you know, so but for me, that kind of leans on what you said about Beal there to why I've gone with Booker in my third team, because when CP3's off, they don't lose anything. And he showed how he could carry a team when they made such a nice run in the bubble last year. And I think I just valued the winning that Booker and, to more of an extent, Donovan Mitchell did over a guy like Beal. As eye-popping as Beal's stats are, you know, he's averaging 30 a game, which is just unbelievable. If he leads the league in scoring and doesn't make all-NBA, that seems a bit iffy. But Booker and Mitchell, similar to what you talked about with Mitchell, Benji, like those two guys have taken the role as the number one option on their team, and they're thriving, and their team's winning because of their dominance. Not just because they're putting up humongous stat lines, but the way that I think they've both taken a bit of a leap in decision making, you know, rather than just going to get their shot and thinking I have to score and that's how I help the team. They set the tone by being aggressive, driving to the basket, getting to the free throw line, you know, getting other guys involved, making the defense collapse, because every night the game plan defensively, it's centered around Donovan Mitchell. It's centered around Devin Booker. So when I talk about those two guys, and it's just unbelievable what their records have been for their teams. You know, like no one expected their teams to be winning at a percentage of over 70% this season. It's really ridiculous, and it'll be interesting to see exactly where they fall, which team gets that number one seed. Utah just slightly ahead after that win today. But I've gone with Booker. Booker averaging for the season almost 26 points on 49% shooting, 35% from deep, 86 at the line, throw in 4.5 assists and 4 rebounds. So Booker's getting it done as a scorer, and I've just valued him, you know, and the contributions he's made to winning. And I'm splitting hairs between Booker and with Donovan, because they've both had really similar statistical seasons and they've had a really big impact. And I just kind of went down to my own personal preference. Who have I liked watching the most? Who would I go for if I had to have one of those two guys this season? And I just went with Booker. So very, very close. But I think the Suns, you know, I don't think anyone would bat an eyelid if Paul and Booker were able to get an all-NBA, especially if they're the number one seed overall. I think if we transfer the conversation away from the guards and onto the forwards in the third team. Before you do that,
I've got to say this. Yeah. My one counter, okay? If you swap Beal with Booker, both Washington and both Phoenix have the exact same roster around them. Do Washington still have the record they do if Booker is on the Wizards and Beal is on the Suns?
I think so, for sure. I think Washington would potentially be better if you swap them over. Let's not inflate Bradley Beal's kind of what he's worth just because Washington, they would need to get a truckload for him. You know, he's a star in this league, absolutely, but he hasn't proven anything to us since he was in the playoffs with John Wall, which feels like a decade ago. So, you know, you can put up 30 points every game in the regular season for 3 seasons, but until Beal starts to do some winning, Booker has showed us that he can win. And that's what I'm valuing over Beal.
Phoenix haven't made the playoffs in like 11 years.
This is only...
It's clinched.
But
It's
that's
clinched
with
this year, for sure, but Booker's
CP3.
been there.
Yeah.
I just think he's the number one option on the team with shared best record in the league in the Western Conference, and you want to get someone who's the number one option on the 10th best team in the East. You want to put him on ahead of Booker in the All-NBA. I just think there's nothing more that Booker could have done. I'm okay that he doesn't make it, but I think in a head-to-head and him over Beal, there's just no question that Booker is a superior player during this regular season. Like, he's just been a killer against every single team. He may not have put up as many 30, 40-point games, but he's the reason that they're winning more games. You know, he's just so integral, so important. He's one of the most 15 important players in the league for me.
I think as well, when you talk Booker, right, he had a bit of a statement game the other day against Philly where he had Tyball up in his jockstrap for the last sort of quarter, and those last 4 field goals they hit, I think it was in the last 2 minutes. For me, that proved that I think Phoenix could be okay without CP. They've still got the team. They've still got Monty Williams coaching them, I think such an underrated coach. I think that just proved to me that I think Booker could probably take them far into the playoffs if, and I hate to say it, CP gets injured. We know that come playoff time, with the minutes that he plays throughout the regular season, he may struggle, right? He's been playing 30, 35 minutes some games this year. He hasn't slowed down, and he's struggled in the playoffs in the past. So let's see what happens there. I don't have an issue with Booker being in the third team. Like I said, I had him versing Donovan really for that 6th guard spot. But I think where it gets interesting is the forwards as well for this third team. I probably struggled with one of the selections. I think the other one's pretty good to go, but happy to kick off and just say that the first, I think, for basically a lock is Zion. What he's been doing in New Orleans with what seems to be a pretty disastrous environment there with the whole coaching scenario. I just think that the fact he's shooting something like 60% from the field,
Do you want to
dominating a lot of teams in the dark.
Do you want to hear that line real quick for Zion?
Please.
33 minutes a game of production is giving you 27 points on 61% shooting. He's also giving you seven and a half rebounds, almost 4 assists. So
could be better when they finally get rid of Ingram, because right now that's what's holding that team back, right? They don't quite understand how to play those two. There's still questions around whose team it is. I think that's ridiculous. It's Zion's team, and Ingram sort of thinks that it could be his team. I think he needs to give that up. But I think Zion, with those sorts of numbers, again, you question where Phoenix are going to finish. They might not even make the play-in, but with these forward spots, I think Zion needs to have one of them. You think about the All-Star game. I know that doesn't count for anything, but he's clearly shown he's probably one of the top 15 players in the league for me. So Zion as one of the forward spots. Das, I take it that you probably then had him, given you had the line down. I don't know. Keen to hear what you guys had.
I think he had Tatum. That's my gut feel.
Yeah, and I did.
I thought so. I could look. See, I've got Zion. I'm on. It seems like it's a Benji and Chris v. Das episode here, but you know,
you can see where the brains are at, boys.
Yeah. Das, go and make the case for Tatum. You can go right away.
All right. So 26 points a game, 46% shooting, 7 rebounds a game, 4.5 assists, a steal, only 2 and a bit turnovers. Jason Tatum, he's as good an offensive talent as there is in the league. And through all the turmoil of the season that Boston have gone through, he's been able to play 58 games through COVID. He actually had COVID. And how many other guys in the league can put on a performance like we saw the other night? There might be a little bit of recency bias, but you don't just drop 60 if you're not one of the best players in the league. Like, that was given it was a little bit of overtime, so he got a couple extra buckets, but the highest Celtic score since Larry Bird. He matched Larry Bird for the highest amount of points in a game for a Celtic with 60. So Jason Tatum, for me, he's got the whole offensive package. You know, if he gets to the free throw line a few times during the game and attacks the basket a little bit more, then he's basically an absolute lock for 28 to 30 points a game. I think he could be a guy who averages 30 in a season. I think when you look at Boston's team, I think the only thing that might be holding him back a little bit, even though he's a really important part, is how good Jaylen Brown is, because it feels like they need ISO time for Brown and they need ISO time for Tatum. But to me, it's no contest. Tatum is the best player on that team. He's the best number one option. And he's basically, for me, Kemba's had a real down season. Smart's missed a lot of time. I feel like Tatum has literally been carrying this team. He had COVID and he's been carrying this team. Looks like they're going to find a way into a spot in the playoffs somehow. But to me, Tatum is an all-round player. You know, I just love how smooth his game is. His jump shot, I feel like when he steps back and shoots over you, there's nothing you can do. And to me, he's consistent. And every time any team's matching up against Boston, he's a nightmare. So that's why, like Zion, he's an incredible guy to watch. I just think it's tough because his team just hasn't, you know, they haven't really defended the whole season. And it's tough for me to put a team that's underperformed expectations that much for him to be all NBA. I think it's a little bit of a stretch, and that's not a knock on Zion because he's going to be all NBA maybe for the next 5 to 10 years. So I think this is Tatum's time. He's shown that he's one of the best players in the league, starter in the All-Star game. You know, for me, no question. I think Tatum's done enough to be all NBA.
Yeah, well, you say the Pelicans have underperformed. Then what are we talking about with Boston? They've definitely underperformed. So I struggle to take Tatum.
Do you think Tatum's underperformed this season, or just the Celtics? Because I think Tatum's still been a bucket.
No. It's not. No, as an individual, Tatum's been very good. Yeah, I'll admit that. But the team itself has sort of underperformed. And I think if you're going to start, you can almost, the way you frame it, Das, is you're putting Tatum in as like a Beal type person. He can get his own numbers, but the team isn't doing that great. And how much of an impact does it have on winning? And you can say the same with Zion, but I think Zion doesn't have the luxury of it's all on Zion, and he had to adjust his game completely. We saw Point Zion suddenly come out of the woodworks. We saw Zion play make. We saw Zion take on everyone at the rim. Zion had to, I don't think anyone could see this growth out of Zion. We sort of potentially had a pigeonholed as this scorer, this explosive highlight machine, and he's turned into a real basketball player. And yes, I'd love the defense to come along, and it's a real issue that it hasn't. Some people have said it's improved, but if you watch any Pelicans games, Zion on an island having to guard a man is disastrous. So I think that's why they potentially had to bring in Steven Adams in the offseason. But I've been super impressed by Zion. I think, yes, maybe the Pelicans team have underperformed, but by how much? What ceiling did we really have for this Pelicans team this year? I don't think we had that great of expectation on them. Certainly nowhere near where we thought Boston would be. I think most people had Boston as a top 4 seed. I'd be surprised if they didn't. But the Pelicans, it's like, look, they can probably make the play-in. I'm not sure anyone had them making the top 8 for the West. Yeah. I think potentially some did. But yeah, I think it's a fair enough argument for the Tatum. As you say, I think the Brown stuff has kind of hurt him, but it's really shown as of late, with Brown sort of dropping off scoring wise, that Tatum's been able to explode. But at the start of the season, it was obviously Jaylen Brown who really got out of the gates fast. And it was kind of, hold on, what's going on with Tatum? But I think Zion throughout the whole season has just been very consistent. And I was worried about how many games Zion would play. I think Zion's only missed 1. So
he's an Iron Man, 62.
It sucks that Tatum got COVID, and last game, if you saw him against Portland, Jaylen Brown actually kicked Tatum in the calf, and they both left. They both left the game late. So it'd be interesting to see if that has any lingering effects moving forward. But yeah, I think that the final nail in the coffin for me with Zion has been his durability. Like, I did not expect that.
Yeah, it's been pretty huge. I think that kind of stands out to me about Tatum, just as you were talking there, is some of the game winners that he's hit and the clutch shots that he's hit, those clutch moments that all-star players and all NBA players get. He's had them this season. You know, he's not a guy who's gone missing at any time. Tatum's been a focal point basically the whole season. And it was only a week or so ago where the Celtics had won 3 or 4 in a row and they were in the 5th seed. So they're still in that middle range where they could lock in a spot in the playoffs without having to play in the play-in. Obviously, it doesn't look good for Tatum being all NBA if they end up in the 7th or the 8th seed and potentially get bounced before the playoffs. But for me and my all NBA teams, I just don't have anyone on here whose team won't be in the playoffs. Like if you're not good enough to get your team to the playoffs, like it's just proves how tough it is to be in the all NBA team. It is just that difficult. And that has led me to my other position in the forwards. And I've gone with Jimmy Butler. I think he's a guy who's been disrespected and he's missed a bit of time. But you look up right now, they're in the 5th seed right now. They're going all right. And the box score that he puts up every single game, it's not flashy in the points department, but boy, is it efficient and boy, does it help your team win. Jimmy Butler, he is averaging 21.5 points a game, still solid, 49% shooting. He's not making many threes. He's only attempting almost 2 a game. So he's doing this without the flash of the 3-point game, which a lot of these stars are doing. 87% at the free throw line, 7 rebounds. He's doing a job there. 7 assists to 2 turnovers for Jimmy Butler. He's playmaking. He's doing everything for Miami, and it stands out to me as well. Over 2 steals a game for Jimmy Butler, and he's played 48 games already this season. So every time he's on the court, he's been awesome. And for me, this is a little bit of a kudos to just how amazing he was and how underrated he was going into the bubble last year. The performance he put on and the way that he's been leading this Miami team, and looks like they're going to be potentially safe in the playoffs. So at least from the play-in. So I think Jimmy Butler is deserving of that spot. I don't know if anyone would like to take the dog up to Jimmy Butler right now because, I reckon he deserves that spot.
Benji, how do you feel about Jimmy?
Yeah, look, I think Jimmy has shown, right, you just have to take the finals last year, that he's a big-time player. I think I had him left off the list. I'm not going to tell you who I had just yet, but for me, Jimmy, yeah, look, the COVID thing plays a role, and if you want to really break it down again to games played, we probably could. But I think Jimmy, he goes zombie-like in some games where he's just not there, right? I've watched some Miami games this year, and if you look at some of the box scores, I know it's not a tell-all, but there's some games where he switches off that I think you have to sort of factor in. I guess all of these guys have bad runs, but I'm just not convinced that Jimmy is or has been one of the top 15 guys in the league this year. I like what he's done for that Miami team. I must say, outside of Bam, right, consistently this year, they really haven't had too much going for them. You look at Hero, who's been pretty poor. Duncan Robinson's shooting well below, I guess, what we expect or where he has been in the past. So I think what he's done for the Miami team to get them to where they are is pretty impressive. I'm, again, sort of doing a Chris here in sort of, liking Butler and making a case that he should be in a team. Who I chose, though, was Paul George, right? And
do we have the same team? Did we?
I can promise people that we did certainly not talk about this prior.
In a vacuum, you take Paul George over Jimmy Butler
this season? Absolutely.
Yeah, I would.
Yep.
Yeah, I would. And I'm sure you have the numbers there, right? But Paul George has been super impressive this year when he.
You want to hear him?
Right? Yeah, please read him out.
They're nice. He's this last month has kind of hurt his percentages a little bit because he was absolutely on fire last month. He was fucking killing it. Yeah. He's 23 points a game on 47% shooting, 42% from deep, making over 3 threes a game, 87 at the line, 6.5 boards, 5 assists, 3 turnovers, and a steal and a bit. So yeah, that's a pretty fancy all NBA like line.
For sure. And Chris, I don't know where you're going to head with the Paul George conviction. I think for me, it's just that when he's played, those numbers have been super impressive. And I go back to the Clippers being one of those teams that, whilst their record suggests they've had a pretty good season, I still feel like it's been underwhelming somewhat, right? We always expect a lot more out of this Clippers team, but I just like what I've seen from PG this year. Like you said, Darcy's been putting up some pretty impressive all-NBA type numbers. And the fact that the Clippers, are still going to finish, possibly top 3 at this point, it's so interesting because, again, I don't want to keep bringing it up, but you have to look at these last 10 games. It really is the first time where I think voters are going to look at what happens literally up until the last game, right? If PG gets injured tomorrow, which he could, then for sure, I think you look at Tatum or Jimmy, provided that they keep the next 10 games going for them. So that's where it's fascinating for me. I think if I had to pick now, though, it'd be PG. But yeah, Jimmy, Jason Tatum, I left off. Jaylen Brown, maybe. But I guess those are the remaining forwards, I guess, that are possibly going to get a look in. There's not too much outside of that. But yeah, Chris, what do you reckon? PG over Jimmy?
Yeah, so the reason I say PG is I think a lot of the times it can be recency bias. So obviously, Jimmy's come back and Miami have started to get things rolling. But you look at Miami's season and look, I get a number of things have occurred that have been unfortunate, but their season's been underwhelming. I was pretty certain about a top 4 seed for them. Obviously, a lot of things haven't gone their way, but it's only been as of late that we've really seen Jimmy's impact. I mean, he was good in leading them the other day, but their main issue has been scoring, and he's had a real reluctancy to score the ball. I know the stats don't reflect well on Jimmy. He provides much more than just what the numbers say. His presence is obviously a game changer for the Heat, but at the end of the day, the season as a whole hasn't been too impressive from Butler. And I get that they've had a short break between the bubble and, going all the way to the finals and the start of the season. And Jimmy got corona himself. I'm pretty sure he missed quite a few games there. And that's when Miami really struggled, when it was just Bam and basically a bunch of nothing. So I get the importance. I'm certainly not, I'm not mad at Darcy for saying he should be, in his all-NBA third team. But I think you look at the whole of this year, and you saw Paul George come out right from the first game, opening night against the Lakers, and he was ready to kill. He was sick of people, he was sick of seeing the side of the backboard meme all off season and all of that sort of stuff. He was coming back with names to tick off, and he was killing pretty much everyone. So I really enjoyed as well when Kawhi missed a lot of games with the foot, that Paul George took the onus to continue scoring the ball. He was putting up big numbers. The only real one that he struggled recently, who was it? Was it against Denver? I think he really shot the ball poorly the other day. So that's again, I get it, the recency bias, but I think the totality of the year has been super impressive from Paul George. Career best from 3-point. He's attempting a lot. He shouldered a lot this season, in my opinion, especially when not only Beverly went down, but Ibaka went down. So the whole team kind of sort of switched. I think the Clippers will be a very interesting team heading into the playoffs, because we haven't seen what their crunch time 5 will be. And those crunch time 5 haven't got a lot of minutes together because, Ibaka played 2 games after the All-Star break, and then we haven't seen him since. So he's going to be an important piece. We obviously know what Beverly does. This is sort of getting off on a bit of a tangent about the Clippers overall, but I do think they're a bit of a dark horse for the chip this year. But I think Paul George isn't getting enough recognition for what has been a terrific season. And I know he got off to a quick start, and it's been bad as of late, but you look at the overall scheme of things, and this is about as good as you could hope for a guy like Paul George.
I agree with that for sure. I think when you talk about Miami, a little bit of underwhelming season. The Clippers, who've gone under the radar, have had a really nice season, and it's quite remarkable that Denver actually kind of hopped above them without Murray on the standings. That is quite wild. It kind of proves how important Jokic is. Yeah. But when you talk about Paul George as opposed to Butler, let's not forget too much that Paul George was a meme coming out of the bubble, shooting the ball off the side of the backboard. So he's shooting career high percentage for 3, which is true, but he's averaging 23.5 points. Butler's averaging 21.5. And they've played, Butler's played 1 less game than George. Butler's got 49% shooting as opposed to 37. And on the defensive end, Jimmy's leading the league in steals at 2.1 a game. So let's not forget about the other side of the ball, because George is a quality defender. I do believe that, but I think Jimmy is kind of stamped himself as all defensive. So that kind of put into my decision making as well.
Were you about to say something, Benji?
I was just going to say, I think I've picked PG. Do I feel good about it? Semi. But what I would say, though, is that would I be surprised if PG was to get this all-NBA tick of approval, third team, and then completely sort of crumble in the playoffs? No, I wouldn't be surprised. That could certainly happen.
Oh, man. It should be fun. I can't wait to see who gets picked.
Yeah, but I think, to Chris's earlier point, PG has done enough this year in the games that he's played to sort of think maybe, or at least I think that this could be the year where he actually really comes out in the playoffs and makes a statement. You know, he didn't like what happened last year in the bubble. Fair enough. I think he was dealing with some personal issues, and, you know, as fans, we get on his back for that. But this year, what he's done has been impressive. I think he could certainly get this third team spot, go into the playoffs, really ball out. And who knows, right? The Clippers, if they can sort of bring it together, get all of their guys, injured guys back, Ibaka, Beverly's 100%. You know, their bench is starting to play a bit better. I'm just adding to the Clippers tangent here, but when you look at Kennard and sort of how his season's played out, he's been impressive in the last sort of couple of you know, games. And I think they're, you know, Morris, you think about him and what he's done. I like their bench a little bit more. So I like where they are coming into the playoffs. I like what PG's done. So I get him the third team.
I think you guys have strengthened my point, because there's no doubt that the Clippers are a more talented team top to bottom, you know, and what Jimmy's been able to do, even though they haven't had as good a season in Miami, I think he is more critical to what they're doing than what Paul George is. But having said that, you know, he's been great. Him and Kawhi on the All-NBA, you know, that's why the Clippers are a potential threat to win the championship.
I had Miami doing better than what they did this year for sure. And it would have been interesting at the beginning of the year if you would ask me, who do you like more this year, right? The Heat or the Clippers? I probably would have gone Clippers, but not much. I think I had Miami finishing in the third seed when I did the sort of bracket at the beginning of the year. I thought they were going to be a lot better. So to that point, if I was to counter, it's that they've been sort of under impressive, I guess you could say. And Butler, you know, whilst he's been fantastic, leading the league in steals, I actually didn't know that. You know, I still think you look at the team and Miami being a little bit underwhelming, it plays a role.
For sure.
Yeah, fair. No,
well,
I
should clear up there that Jimmy Butler's leading it in steals per game. The overall steals leader is TJ McConnell. So let's just give TJ his respect on that one.
Yeah,
fantasy repping right there, Das. I like that.
Is there?
Look, it's pretty obvious that then the last center spot is Gobert, but shit, I was finding every reason to not put him in there. I hate Gobert.
Yeah,
actually.
I like him.
Das knows about my hate for him when it comes to Defensive Player of the Year talk. But yeah, I think it's hard to be able to pick anyone outside of Rudy. You could throw in Bam there, but again, I think it comes back to you got to look at how the season's been going. You can't disrespect the Utah Jazz like that. So I don't think there's not too much debate there that we need to have. I mean, if any Gobert debate, we can probably get into that with Defensive Player of the Year, but
absolutely.
Yeah, that probably wraps up. Is there any like snubs or notable candidates that we haven't mentioned that should be spoken about?
I think a guy who deserves a bit of talk about it, but he just couldn't be on it, was Tobias Harris. He's had a super efficient season on the best team in the Eastern Conference, and at the clutch moments, he actually does big things for the Sixers. Yeah. So his numbers might not stand out, but if you've watched him play, he's been tough to guard for every team this whole season.
Yeah. Agreed.
If there was a fourth or fifth team, maybe I think he just misses the cut. I had Russ as the major one as well, but
touched on that, yeah,
pretty much all good.
If Fox played more games,
no.
Okay,
yeah,
I was just asking.
He's my fantasy guy this year. I've watched so much De'Aaron. I'd love to get him in this team somehow. I couldn't do it. Maybe next year.
Yeah. Exactly. Need to start winning some damn games and playing some defense. But yeah. Okay. Well, that's great. So that wraps up the All-NBA. We'll see how that goes. I think the key thing to take away from is just how fluid this all is, as Benji's been saying. So much can change, you know, next week, end of the regular season. So be interesting to see how it all pans out.
Maybe we'll post these predictions and then we'll see how close they are when the names come out.
Exactly, definitely. We'll put up a graphic and make sure we cover all three, and then compare it to how it goes. So, the awards, a little bit of carryover from the All-NBA team, potentially a little bit of crossover, but makes sense to touch on it anyway and start with MVP. Jokic v. Embiid. Is there still a discussion?
No, not for me. What's the key to Jokic? Why has he been so good this year? Why is he the most valuable player in the year? For me, it's because he's become the number one scoring option. You know, he's just decided that, okay, I'm good enough to score on any of these guys. He's gone up to 26 points a game on 56% shooting. So that he's gone in Zion territory offensively. It's ridiculous. He's making 1.5 threes a game on 41%. and just throw in 11 rebounds and 8.5 assists to a three turnover ratio. So that's just absolutely nasty from the Joker. He's bona fide MVP.
The one thing I will quickly say about Jokic is I watched the game today against the Lakers. It was a low-scoring one, but some of the shots he was hitting were Dirk-esque, right? His offensive game, everyone raves about the passing. We all know that. Some of the scoring that he's been doing lately is crazy. Darcy, repping Nowitzki, but yeah, his shooting is unbelievable. I think to Darcy's point, this one's a lock. I don't see it going to anyone else. Maybe, but I think one's over.
He averaged 19 points per game last year. He's up to 26. Guys absolutely killed it this year. He turned it on.
Yeah, I think what sealed the deal was the recent 10-game stretch they went on as soon as Murray got injured. They 9-1 or 8-2 if you want to include today's result. So that pretty much confirms that it's his award. The only real caveat I sort of had was when I mentioned in last week's pod with Das, if the Sixers got the number 1 seed and Denver dropped out of the top 4, then you could start to make a bit more of a case for Philly. But it looks like Denver's going to be able to find a way in there to hold on to a top 4 seed. So that probably seals the deal really for that and puts the final nail in the coffin. So tough one as a Sixers fan, but yeah, it's really hard to argue. You just got to accept it. So we'll be looking to win a championship and not worry about an MVP award anyway. So I'm not too concerned. Rookie of the year.
All right.
So
this is the toughest, by far the toughest, the closest, and the hardest one to call, I reckon.
I think there was a lot of chatter, obviously, before we knew the LaMelo Ball was going to return potentially sooner than what was expected, that, we're not looking at an Anthony Edwards, chucking up 20 shots a game, taking 10 step-back threes. This isn't going to be our rookie of the year, is it? And, thank the Lord that LaMelo Ball came back and we can now have a bit more of a discussion. But where do you sit on it, Benji? Where do you sit on the rookie of the year?
Exactly the same, in that when LaMelo came back for me, that was the turning point where I sort of said, okay, well, I think it is going to be LaMelo. I sort of had him earlier in the season from what he was doing. No one expected him to ball out the way he did, myself included. And I think the fact that he's back now, if he sort of gets back to the form he showed, I don't know how bad the wrist is, but if he gets back to the form that was sort of playing out before he got injured over these last 10 games, I think that solidifies it for him. I'm interested to see, to be completely honest, the rookie teams, right? Because it's actually been a really, really good draft class. I mean, you think about some of the other rookies that are possibly deserving of rookie of the year. I think Tyrese Halliburton probably before anyone else. What he's been doing at the Kings, I know I mentioned I've watched a lot of Kings basketball, so I've seen a lot of Tyrese, and he's been playing really well, right? He's almost like a veteran the way he plays, which is crazy from a rookie. He's been there all year, doing it off the bench, starting when needed. So I think you could make a case there for maybe Tyrese. Anthony Edwards, to your point, I wouldn't be satisfied if he won it. I'd take a break from basketball for a little bit, just the way he gets up shots. It's clearly what he's being asked to do over there. But, each to their own. I think, LaMelo wraps it up for me and takes home the rookie of the year.
Yeah, well, if LaMelo didn't return, I would have actually, I know it's a long stretch, but I think Jayshawn Tate's been really good as well from Houston. I don't think he's getting enough love. I think he'll probably finish top 5 in the race in the end anyway. You can throw on another name. He won't win it, but I still think he's been impressive. Sadiq Bey, I think he's been a real nice find for Detroit. And if you actually watch any Pistons games, which I won't hold it against you if you don't, because not many people do, but he's got a man's body. If you look at him, he is actually like built. He's ready to, almost be in a 7-game playoff series like tomorrow, and he can withstand it. So he's definitely doesn't. I don't really think he hit a rookie wall, to be honest, this year. He was pretty consistent. I mean, he wasn't asked to do a terrible amount. He's got a wet jumper. You definitely don't want to leave him. Pretty awkward shooting technique, but it works more often than not, and he crashes the boards pretty well. It potentially would have got more recognition earlier in the season if Jeremy Grant didn't start the way he did with the Pistons. If you remember how he kicked off the season, like Jesus, that feels like an eternity ago that we were speaking about. Almost thought that Jeremy Grant was a lock for the most improved, but unfortunately, most improved isn't a 1-month award. So that's I guess why Jeremy Grant can't be in it. But I think it comes back to Ball. I think him returning and the fact he's probably going to get another 6 or 7 games in him is a big deciding factor. And if Charlotte can cement themselves, they're probably going to be looking at a playing game. But if they can, continue and finish out this regular season strong. I mean, the thing that you were concerned about, Benji, is how will he go with the wrist? I think passing wise, we've seen in the first 2 games back, his passing is no issue at all. Just throwing underhands from, 3/4 court and, all of that sort of stuff. The main thing will probably be a bit, how will his scoring and shooting go? We saw the Hornets the other day play Miami, and the Heat experience really stood up and really basically overshadowed that Hornets team. So the Heat culture was probably too much. So that's probably the only concern that you'd think about going into a playing game for the Hornets. But that takes away from the point because it's a regular season award. I think it's balls to lose now that he's back. That's probably the clincher that he'll get, another 8 games in. That's LaMelo for me.
I got to agree that I think that LaMelo has been the most impressive rookie this year, and he's had the guy with the biggest impact. He's the face of this draft class. There's no doubt about it. He's the most entertaining to watch. He's really impactful on his team's game style, and you can see it. Like, there's a change in their culture of their team. They're one of the happiest teams for sure in the league. They're good to watch, and it's part of the reason that they've been a winning team is his influence for sure. I think when you talk about LaMelo, you think about some of his big moments during the season that really stand out. Game against Utah when he dropped 34 points with 8 assists, a 27-point game against Milwaukee with 9 assists, and then he had a monster game against Portland as well. 30 points, 6 rebounds, 8 assists, 4 steals, 3 blocks. So he's shown that he can fill up the stat line like no one else in this rookie class, which is pretty special. One thing that does make this a tough call is he has only played 43 games. So it's unlikely that he'll get over 50 games when Halliburton's played 58 and Edwards has already played 65. So I'm with you, Benji, and you've heard Chris talk about how his displeasure for Anthony Edwards this season. I don't want to see him win it. He's putting up numbers, but to me, it's not efficient, and he hasn't really figured it out as a player, and they're just losing way too many games for this to kind of be acceptable for him to win the award. So I think if you do rule out LaMelo Ball because of he hasn't played enough games, which potentially you could do as a voter, I think Halliburton is definitely the second guy. When Benji talked about it, his feel for the game, when you watch him play, he just really understands it, and it shows out in his efficiency and his assist to turnover. So for the season, Halliburton's averaging 13 on 48% shooting, 41% from 3 for a rookie, making 2 out of 5. His free throw percentage is 86, 3 rebounds, 5.5 assists, only 1.5 turnovers, 1.5 steals. So he's making great decisions. He's a player who obviously understands how to be a point guard in the NBA. And like when you watch him out there, he has a personality of a guy who wants to win, and he does what it takes to win, whether it's making plays for other people or waiting for the right time to shoot the 3 and then knocking it down. So, and he's also a guy who, if there was one team who you thought a rookie could be extremely frustrated on, it could be Sacramento, because they've just been so frustrating to watch. It doesn't feel like the coach knows what they're doing, and he's got almost an all-star point guard in front of him, but he's still been able to put up this production. So I think LaMelo's the guy. I agree with you guys, but if you do roll him out because not playing enough games, I think Halliburton's your man.
You give Sacramento credit for even drafting him, right? That's the one tick of approval they get as a franchise. There's 8 or 9 teams that are questioning what happened on draft night when you look at Tyrese Halliburton this year.
A steal.
Yeah, absolute steal. And unfortunately hurt himself there at the end of that game against Dallas. He did the hyperextend his knee. Yeah, so
he could be done.
He could be done, given Sacramento and what they're looking at now. They're well and truly out of the play-in. So he will probably finish around that 58-60 mark. But as well, I know you mentioned us the games, and yes, 40 might not sound a lot, but if LaMelo can get to, 45, 46, remember, it's a 72-game season. It's not 82. So if you can play, 65, 70% of games, is that enough? I would tend to say yes. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what
you don't have that little slate that Embiid didn't get Rookie of the Year because he didn't play enough games, because he was by far and away the best rookie. Like there was a mile between him, and just because he didn't play enough games,
that was bad. That was like, I think he only played 30 games that season, so 30 out of 82. That's at least get to half. But there's a reason why Sixers fans hate Malcolm Brogdon. So there's no way he should have won that award. But yeah,
I should say that Edwards, that is an interesting point. There is 10 games to go. So if Edwards goes on a tear, he could navigate the line.
Don't get me started.
I grabbed 2 little games from Edwards this year at the Lakers, 28 points, 7 rebounds, 5 assists, a steal and 2 blocks on 10 of 21 shooting. And then he went off for 42 at Phoenix, 15 of 31 from the field, hit 4 threes, 7 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals, 2 blocks. He's got the most scoring points in the game this season in a rookie, 42 on 48% shooting. So,
He's had some games, but when the MO on that team is, hey, we don't know what the hell we're doing, and Edwards, you seem like you can score, you're a rookie, go out there and just get some shots up. I think he's bound to have a couple of decent games, as you've highlighted, but I couldn't get around a Rookie of the Year that is, I guess, coming from a team that has done so poorly, and he's just been putting shots up. I'd be interested to see the field goal percentage within that range, Das, that you're talking about, but it wouldn't be good.
It's about 40 flat for the season. So yeah, it's not good.
And if anyone's been watching Timberwolves games, they've been winning recently because Russell's back. That's it. He makes a big difference off their bench. So that's I think where we'll probably leave it with that one. All right. So 6 Man of the Year. Now, if you asked me a month ago, I would have said this is a lock. I'd be curious to know where you guys both stand. The name that is spoken about most is obviously Jordan Clarkson, but you can potentially start to make a case for some other names because he's dropped off as of late. And I think it's a pretty reasonable thing to be able to have a discussion. I don't think it's as certainty as it once was. Benji, where do you sit on it?
Yeah, I mean, I think Jordan Clarkson probably deserves it. I think what he was doing at the beginning of the season, you call it almost half of the season, right, has been probably enough in my eyes to justify it. I think, I don't know of too many other candidates. I know Chris Boucher, I think, is one that his name might get tossed around a little bit. Has Montrezl Harrell been, as effective at the Lakers based on the fact that he got it last year? I don't think so. I think that one's out of the question. So I look at this one as probably more Jordan Clarkson, but curious, Das, as to who you think could sort of possibly make some waves here.
I don't think anyone else is really more deserving than Clarkson. I would push back there a little bit to say that, he's the 6th man on the best team in the league. They score the most points. And, he's averaging 17 points a game off the bench. His shooting's cooled off a bit, but they're still going to him a lot. It's because teams are game planning for him more. Because off the bench, he's their creator. He does a lot for them offensively, trying to get to the basket, trying to score. Chris spoke about it on a pod earlier this season, how he's refined his game between getting to the basket and getting a nice little floater or a finish. He threw down a massive dunk the other day as well. I don't know if you guys saw that. That was absolutely massive against Toronto. Yeah, that was nasty. But he's averaging 3 made threes a game, coming off the bench. He's averaging 4 rebounds, 17 points. His percentage has dropped down to about 42 field goal for the season, but he's coming in and trying to score, and he's doing it. He's scoring 17 points a game, which is a lot for a guy off the bench. That leads by about 2 or 3 points on anyone coming off the bench this season. And I know it was earlier in the season, but this game basically solidified it for me. And Chris, you won't remember this one very fondly, but when Philly came into town and he lit them up, he torched them. 13 of 20 from the field, 8 of 13 from the free throw line, 6 of 7 from the 3-point line. He dropped a 40-piece with 2 steals. And no one is doing that off the bench in the NBA, dropping 40. And, that was a blowout. They sat him for a little bit of that game. So in 29 minutes, he dropped 40. This guy's the best scorer off the bench in the league. And I get it. That's, he might not have an all-around game, but
that wasn't a blowout, was it? I don't think that was a blowout. That was where Simmons had 40
Simmons had 40.
Well. That wasn't it wasn't a blowout though, but yeah.
The fourth quarter was a bit of a pile on. But anyway, I think
No,
Clarkson,
your
no
point stands.
question,
Your point stands.
no
Yeah,
debate.
your point stands. I think Clarkson has been phenomenal. But the reason why I bring up, I think, is more of a conversation, is because two guys, his teammate Joe Ingles has been bloody good this year as well. Sure, might not be putting up the offensive numbers that Clarkson does, but Ingles is 10 times the playmaker that Clarkson is. He's shooting the hell out of the ball as of late as well, Ingles.
Nice.
And that's always been a staple to his game, just a consistent, reliable outside jumper. Crafty, old man game, can always get to his left, loves doing the pick and roll and, just basically dishing it off to Gobert. And then he always throws in the fake and throw it up with the left.
Yeah.
So he does that like 10 times a game. I think he's definitely worthy of a mention. And the other guy, you will like him. Miles Bridges has had a phenomenal season for Charlotte. I think I know he started as of late, so especially the fact that Gordon Hayward's gone down, but I think it kind of almost further adds to his case that if you give him more opportunity, he'll produce. So it's a little bit of victim of the circumstance that he was stuck behind Hayward because he's been pretty damn reliable and especially when LaMelo was out as well, it was basically a lot of Rozier and Bridges to help them navigate that difficult period where they were short on guys themselves. I mean, Charlotte don't really have a big man, so they have to come up against teams and really play small ball, rely heavily on PJ Washington. And I always thought PJ Washington was the better out of the two between him and Bridges, but I think it's Bridges. I think you know what you're going to get out of Bridges every game. He's not just a highlights, package. Yes, he does have big dunks. Boy, does he have some. I think he should be in the dunk contest next year. But Anthony Edwards, Miles Bridges, anyone else who should be in the dunk contest, I can't think of. But those two should be headliners. But I think there's much more to Bridges' game. He's not reliant on the outside shot, even though he is good at it. Whereas I think PJ Washington is pretty reliant on the outside game. But Bridges has refined, can finish with the right or left. I've found myself watching quite a few Charlotte games, and that's without LaMelo Ball. And Bridges has played some crucial roles and dropped some pretty easy 30-point games. The one against Brooklyn, he pretty comfortably dropped 30. I know Brooklyn aren't the most defensive, juggernaut, but if you can drop 30 in an NBA game, that's still impressive to me. So I think Bridges and Ingles should be the guys that get worthy of mentions. But I do understand that both of you are like, it's Clarkson, and that's more than fair given just, how good he's been.
One thing as well, I think is interesting to your point there, Chris, is I don't know if there's ever been a case where, you could almost say that if Clarkson and Ingles were to get it, they're the 6th and 7th man of the year. I don't know if there's been a case where two guys from the same team have finished top 2 in voting for this.
The whole Utah bench should just get it.
Well, Lou Will and Montrez rubbed each other out last year effectively. They were both pretty good.
Yeah. So it just goes to show that when those two are doing what they can do off the bench, right? Utah, to Darcy's point, have had the best record in the league and may end up with it. I think, pretty lock on Clarkson. Bridges will get some votes too. I'm with you, Chris. He's been pretty phenomenal this year as well.
Yeah,
I love Bridges' energy. He's a fun guy to play with. He could get 10 boards in about 5 minutes if he wanted to. He's so dangerously athletic.
You've seen it when he started recently, right?
For sure. I think it's interesting. The mold of the 6-man and what we expect of the award has kind of been shaped by those two guys who have won it like 4 or 5 times apiece, Crawford and Lou Williams. Like they're scoring guards off the bench, and that's kind of what everyone wants out of their first guy off the bench. A guy who can just come and be an instant bucket, be a little microwave. But we saw the impact that Montrezl Harrell had last year as a big energy guy. Kind of changed the game with his rebounding and his potential shot blocking and his finishing at the rim. And that's where that mold that I think that Bridges feels into is kind of similar to why Harrell won the 6-man award last year. And you're right about Charlotte have got hardly anything inside. Their center rotation is the weakest in the league. So the way that Bridges comes in and holds it down is really impressive. I think there's one guy, I think the Mavs have an interesting bench. They get a lot of points and they do it by committee. But I think Jalen Bronson is one of the most reliable guards off the bench in the league. And his stats aren't flashy, but he's in the Mavs' best 5, I think. And he comes off the bench every game, and he is everything for our bench unit. When Luka goes off, he's everything.
Yeah, No, I can't argue with that. Yeah,
I kind of like Shake Milton for that reason as well. He's been impressive.
not good enough overall. He started the season pretty well, but had a really poor stretch for a good 2 months where he didn't do too much. So a little bit inconsistent for mine. I wish, gosh, it is frustrating watching Sixers games, but sometimes you don't know what Milton is doing. You don't know if he's gone out the night before or whatever and somehow escaped COVID and protocols, and because he just looks lost at times, and it's unfortunate. There's definitely moments where he dominates and takes over like he should, and is really that third scoring guy outside of Tobias and Embiid, but you just don't get enough on a nightly basis. So unfortunately, it's not Shake. And there's been plenty of games where Maxi's come on and looked twice as good as Milton. So it's something that sort of have to find a balancing act. Hopefully he shows up in the playoffs, because I think we'll need it. It's going to be the same thing. That's happened with all playoffs. Team's going to sag on Ben. They're going to throw a lot of attention at Embiid. They're going to have the best wing defender on Tobias. So we need someone who can really score the ball on the perimeter. So it's probably going to need a Shake Milton to have a game. Or maybe George Hill needs to knock down a couple of threes. I don't know. I'm stretching here, but
Well, Clarkson's the same way. He's going to have a massive role when Utah get down to the clutch time, because Utah in previous seasons, it's just been at the end of the game in the playoffs, how many buckets can Donovan get? Like, just find us a shot, Donovan. Just throw up 35 shots if you have to, because we just can't find half-court offense. And Clarkson, they're going to be relying on him to do that.
Yeah, exactly. And Mike Conley. I think he's a crafty player, but 100%. I think Clarkson at the end of the day is going to be crucial.
Hopefully he's fit. Apparently it's a bit of a hamstring that he's struggling through right now. They need Conley fit big time.
Yeah, he was diming the hell out of the ball before he just did his hammy as well. He was getting 10 assists pretty easily. So, hopefully he can round up into form, because they do want to see if Utah are to falter and to struggle like they have in the last few postseasons. I want it to be with them fully healthy. I don't want any if they had this guy, if they had that guy. So hopefully he can come back.
Sure.
And you want it to be against the Warriors when we get the 8th seed.
Time.
We believe.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Most improved player. Now, this is a lock. It's got to be Julius Randle. I'm not sure there's really much discussion that we can have.
No.
Yeah. Okay. We'll move on. He's been so impactful. The fun fact is the Knicks have a better record than the Lakers. So there's something that hasn't happened for a while, to say the least.
The jump,
a mysterious thing.
The jump for him, the jump for Randall went from 19 points a game to 24. He upped his field goal from 45 to 46 and a half. His 3-point percentage, he was making 1 a game last year at 27%. Now he's making 2.5 a game at 43%. He's upped his free throw from 73 to 81. And he's upped his rebounding up to almost 11 a game. He's upped his assists from 3 to 6. And he's averaging more steals and more blocks now. So they won 21 games last year at a winning percentage of 0.318. They were 12th in the East. And this year, they're 37 and 28 with a winning percentage of 0.569. They're 4th in the East right now. And their team is basically the same. They've only made a couple of, roster-wise, they've only made a couple of adjustments. We know that it's basically all due to the outstanding season that Randall's had. And there's no question he's made probably the biggest leap in the league. I'll put a little tick here that Jerami Grant was making the same kind of leap at the beginning of the season. He was. He just has not been able to keep it up. And that's just credit to Randall. And, 64 games of pure dominance from Julius Randall. He's winning that award for sure.
The only other guys that I had sneaking in, and by sneaking in, I mean they might pick up a couple of 1 point votes and finish up with 4 or 5, is Malik Monk. We touched on Charlotte before. I've really liked his progression this year, and how, to your point before around, guys that can come off the bench and add some scoring pretty much straight away. He's one of those, and he's turning into one. I'm really excited to what I see. Really excited about what I think he can become. So I'm keeping a keen eye on him. Chris Boucher, I mentioned before, might get a couple of votes. And it'd be a sin to leave out De'Aaron Fox based on what I've seen this year in my fantasy team. So I'm going to say that De'Aaron might get a couple of votes. But I'll
Good
leave it at
shout.
that, given that we're in the lock.
Yep, great points. Yep, really good to bring up a couple of those guys. My one I had at the start of the year, based on I had Ja Morant as my preseason guy, and the way he started was unbelievable. But then doing the ankle, and he hasn't been the same guy. What I actually saw was he started to look like himself in a couple of those games against Portland. Like, he dominated Portland in Portland. That was 100% Ja, and that was without Valanciunas. So I'm interested to see how that balance is moving forward, because potentially with Valanciunas not in the lineup, Ja can really be his true self, and Memphis can get out and run, and it can really be, Morant's show. So just something to keep a note on moving forward.
For our Houston fans, we should mention Christian Wood. He's missed a lot of games, so I don't think he can win the award, but he was a nothing, and now he's a 20-10 guy. Just unfortunate that no one's watching them because they just keep losing. And Kelly Olynyk's basically outshining him. Kelly Olynyk's saying,
awesome.
"Oh yeah, I can get 20 and 10, Christian, and you only get 20 and 10 to play the whole game at the center." So yeah, they kind of hurt Christian Wood a little bit. Interested to see how he goes next year, though.
Yeah, definitely. They'll probably have the number one pick, I'm guessing, or they'll at least have a top three. You'd probably be able to assume that.
Caden Christian. Caden Christian.
Yeah,
and Kevin
exactly.
Porter
If they can get Cunningham, then Cunningham, KPJ, and Wood.
KPJ.
I don't know if is Olynyk is he a free agent, or is he signed? What's his deal? Okay,
contract.
Free agent.
Okay. So Olynyk's just doing his best to put up some numbers so someone can sign him for a decent amount. But okay, final award, Defensive Player of the Year. I think you guys both know who I would take for it, so I'm not sure I need to make too much of a case. Yeah, very good, Dust. Very good.
Which Philly? I'm serious. Which Philly player? Are you going with Simmons?
Yeah, it's Ben. It's Ben. I know the case you like to put forward about Embiid and how his importance and his rim protection plays a key role in Ben being able to do what he can do. But at the end of the day, I actually think, he probably struggles a little bit when we play small ball and Ben has to play 5. So it's a stretch to say he can switch 1 through 5, but he's about one of the few guys that can switch 1 through 5 if you want to push that far. Definitely 1 through 4. He always takes on the challenge of the best opposition scorer every night, whether they're a guard, a wing, he does it all. So I think that's got to get the recognition. It's got to get the love. He puts in the same amount of effort every single night, no matter if it's Colin Sexton or Bradley Beal. Like it doesn't matter to Ben. He's busting his ass. And today he was giving his all against Kobe White. Like, you could forgive Ben for being on, the second night of a back-to-back. Philly had just, played an overtime game in San Antonio, and we come into Chicago, no Vucevic, no Levine. Ben could take the night off, but he didn't. He still busted his ass to make sure he was sprinting around screens so Kobe White couldn't get any cheap looks, and he was just making life difficult. So a lot of that stuff just reaffirms to me that he's the deserved Defensive Player of the Year, and an award that I've said to Das many times has been labeled the Big Man Award, and I think that's pretty unfair. You see Gobert getting cooked so often. I get Gobert's rim protection, but you saw the other day Booker just putting him on skates. I know it's a guard against a big man, but Booker just burning him in that corner and knocking the 3 on his head. But I feel like too often guys can cook against Gobert. Specifically, if you want to look at one matchup that never goes in Gobert's favor, it's when they play the Nuggets. Jokic cooks him every single time. So I get Gobert's importance to the defense. His rim protection's elite. He rebounds the ball great. But gosh, I don't think his one-on-one defense is super impressive. It doesn't stand out to me. So those would be my reasons as to why Ben should get it.
One thing I've noticed this year in the games that I've watched is you're absolutely right. He gets cooked by Booker and CP in that Phoenix game. He got cooked by Jokic, and then he got cooked by Embiid when they played him as well. So it seems with Gobert that he's fantastic against some of these teams that don't know how to put the ball in the hole. But when it comes up to these sort of really good teams where he's really having it to lock down, I mean, CP and Booker basically were running screens to get Gobert on them in the fourth quarter of that game, right? That's how they knew they were going to win the game. And I don't think you can be the Defensive Player of the Year award when teams are scheming on you to literally win the game. I think there's enough noise now around Ben and the fact he guards all positions and does it well. I've loved his attitude toward defending this year. You can tell he wants it. I'm curious as well just to see if there's any of this sort of voter fatigue when it comes to Gobert, right? He's won a bunch now. Is it sort of, okay, we appreciate that Gobert's sort of been really good defensively over the last couple of years. Is it now time to give it to someone like Ben for what he's doing? You know, Ben Wallace won a handful right back in the early 2000s, but I just think that maybe we start to see Ben Simmons come through and maybe some more guards get it. To your point, Chris, I think the age of just giving it to defensive centers is off.
I think Kawhi was the last wing to win it / guard. So
Was he? Okay.
and we know how good he is defensively.
Yeah.
It's an interesting debate between like who's the best one-on-one defender in the NBA, like who can guard the most guys one-on-one in any situation. I think that would tilt it towards a guy like Simmons. But the reason I suppose why I think the award will go to Gobert and why I think it should is just it's kind of a reward for a defensive system that Utah have got in place, because you can't run that kind of system without the rim protection. And I guess it's got to do with the nature of the game being played on the perimeter and basically every team having 4 guys around the 3-point line shooting the ball, is that when they get to the basket, they want to get layups or kick out for open threes. So Gobert literally erases multiple layups that teams get, easy buckets that teams get in the game. Like I remember watching against the Mavericks, everyone who was able to beat their guy off the dribble to the paint would half the time they just wouldn't even put up a shot because of the threat of Gobert, just the sheer size and the length of him, the amount of shots that he changes, not just the ones that he blocks. And he does block a lot, by the way. We go in and have a look. He's second in the league in blocks per game at 2.8 a game. Miles Turner is number 1 on 3.4. But overall blocks, Turner's only got 159. Gobert's got 180 blocks already. So he is turning down shots at an unbelievable rate. And that just has such a big impact on winning. And what I talk about with how he's the anchor of their team and how it's all, I guess, the key to the Defensive Player of the Year debate for the system that they're in is that the defense for Utah is based around their ability to guard the 3-point line. And their whole team, every single player on their team knows and relies that he's there to back them up. It's kind of the success of their defense as a whole is contingent on the abilities of Gobert at the rim. And, you know, he might be a bit clumsy. He might be, you know, potentially a guy who could fall over and you can shake him pretty easily. But the reality is in the split second situation at the rim, there's no one better at defending it. There's no one better at stopping a shot at the basket than him. And I just think he has an advantage over a guy like Turner because he's a little bit smarter. You know, he doesn't jump as many times for a block. You know, you'll see him get caught in the air, but you don't see Gobert getting fouled out anymore nowadays. You know, he's a smart player. He's starting to understand that I can just be as good a shot blocker as anyone else in the league by just being big and showing my size. And I think he's just getting better and better at that particular role. And that's why he should be in it. You know, the Jazz, they're third best in the league in opposition points per game at 106. And point differential, they're number 1 in the NBA. So their offense is killing it and they're locking teams up on D. That's why they're plus 9.1 for the season in point differential. Phoenix is the second best, so they got a pretty strong defense as well. And interesting, the least points per game. Which team do you think it is giving up the least points per game?
Knicks.
So, you know, who's to blame for that? Who's the best defender on the Knicks team? It's an interesting question. Maybe a guy like Nerlens Noel needs some kind of noise to be in an all-defensive team, or even Randall himself has been pretty solid. He's playing the whole game. RJ Barrett's playing the whole game. So those are the guys doing a lot of the defending for the Knicks, and they've been pretty special. But for me, yeah, it's Gobert hands down. I think Simmons had a great
Hands down?
Yeah, I think so. I think
it'll be closer than that. I think it'll be closer.
Yeah, I think
I've told you that the Phillies defense isn't great without Simmons. It's not great without Embiid. And they could both win it. I couldn't necessarily make a case for Simmons over Embiid because I think Embiid's just that important. Embiid shadows what Gobert is doing.
I think I know you love your stats, Das, and you're rattling off a lot there. So I know people could potentially get caught up in that. But I think you got to come back to one thing. Gobert's very easy to scheme against. You mentioned how Utah went up against your Mavs. The Mavs found a way to easily get by Utah, and that was to make sure that Finney Smith was in the corner and Gobert had to make the difficult decision between do I stay or do I go with the rim and the perimeter. You know, Finney Smith put up 12 threes or whatever he did and made 5 or 6 of them. And that's how the Mavs were able to exploit a team like Utah in that particular situation. And you talk about Benji before saying how Phoenix's offense down the stretch was let's switch on to Gobert and attack him. That can't be your defensive player of the year. I get his importance to the team, but he's too easy to scheme against. When people come up against Ben, you know what they're trying to do? They're trying to say, yo, like, mate, come over here and screen so I can switch off of Ben so I can just get a little bit of space to breathe and hopefully I can get up a half decent shot. There's no way to scheme against Ben other than hoping he switches off you. And Ben's too quick. He's too strong that he fights through screens and he refuses to be switched on to guys. So I think it's harsh to say hands down. I get that you're saying that potentially Embiid and Simmons being on the same team can really affect, one person being able to stand out and really take that award. But gosh, I've said it to you in the past. I think you can easily replace a guy like Gobert, but I think it's very hard to replace a guy like Simmons in the defense.
I've gone Simmons, and I think it'll be pretty close, right? I don't think it's going to be a sweep in terms of voting. I think I wouldn't be surprised if this is probably one of the closer votes that we've spoken about. So curious, but look, I got Simmons just because of the fact that, he guards every position. He's shown now that he's a defensive weapon, and we all know Gobert's pedigree, but I'm keen for something different. I'd like to see Simmons win it.
Have we got Quinn Snyder or Monty Williams, coach of the year?
Oh, good. I didn't have that in there. Good idea.
Monty. I think
I've got Quinn. I've got Quinn.
Okay.
I think.
Okay.
I think they'll get the number 1 seed. I think he's been underappreciated as a coach for the last 3 seasons, and their system, they haven't changed any of their players. Their system just got better. They've just got better at what they're doing. And Monty Williams needs credit for integrating one of the superstars of the league and Chris Paul, and they're absolutely killing it. They're maximizing Chris Paul to the most, and he deserves maximum credit for that. But I feel like Utah have actually built something over years and years, and it's just the most efficient, best to watch basketball in the league, I think, for Utah. So I think Snyder gets it.
Let's not forget Tibbs. I think he's going to get a ton of votes as well. So this is another close one. I sort of, with you, Das, looked at Monty, I looked at Tibbs, I looked at Quinn. I think it's a race of 3 there. And I think all of them are really, really deserving, right? And
whichever team gets best record, I think. Whichever team gets best record might just tip it.
10 games to go. Theme of the night, guys.
Yeah, I won't open up too much debate here, but I'll do myself a service here and make sure we throw in Doc Rivers just to not have too much shade. Potentially being the guy to unlock Embiid. Being the guy to unlock Embiid. No one was able to do it beforehand.
Steve Nash, he's been able to unlock James Harden and Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. What a job he's done.
I could unlock those 3.
Yeah, what do you reckon he does, Das? What do you reckon Steve Nash's game plan is? He goes, okay, Kyrie, if you get the ball and you have a matchup you like, you can attack. And James, if you have a matchup you like, you can attack. No, I'm kidding. There's much more to coaching than just that. But, he has been very good because, part of being a coach is ego management, personality management, being able to navigate a season. We know how quickly, if NBA players don't like you, it's a players league. Your Rossi can turn on you like that and you'll be out of a job. So, that's just as much of a piece to the puzzle of being a good NBA coach as the X's and O's and, scheming and ATOs and, what everyone loved. What's his face? Brad Stevens for being able to do a few seasons ago, but how's he going now? So I'll throw that out there as my parting shot.
Nice.
Boston's over under was 44.5. I think they'll be lucky to get 40. So
nice. Good call, Chris. Good call.
Yeah. There you go. The hate for Boston actually paying off. So, and I want Boston in the first round. I don't know if they'll slip enough for us to get him, but
bit of payback for the sweep last year.
I'd love that. I'd love that. Yeah.
Been listening to too much Bill Simmons, Chris.
Bill Simmons, Jesus Christ. Don't get me started on him. Anyway, I'll say the one nice thing I'll say about Boston, Neesmith is playing well as of late.
Oh, out of nowhere.
He's picked it up. So if he can finally show up in a playoffs, if Fournier can make a shot, they might be able to do something. So, yeah, Darcy and I are big fans of Time Lord on this podcast, Benji, if you've been tuning in for majority of it, but
I held some Time Lord stock there at one point. I think I had him in the fantasy team for about a week and then got frustrated with him, but he's on my radar.
Yeah, Darcy will never sell his stock. Darcy's a lifetime shareholder of Time Lord, so
he's got that knee injury. I hope that doesn't linger. We know these 7-footers with their knee injuries, but I've got faith. You just got to give him some time.
Exactly. Okay, perfect. We'll leave things there. Darcy and I will be back to speak about, I think, maybe revisiting our predictions. Potentially we could do that next week if we don't have time to do that on this pod. But otherwise, we'll do a massive preview for both the play-in and then once the play-in's done, look ahead to the playoffs as well. So looking forward to that.
Winning time.
There's so much that's exciting about that play-in game. Anything can happen. If, Draymond Green gets in foul trouble, sorry to bring your nightmares to potentially to life there, Benji, but so many different things could happen. They could roll his ankle.
Kick someone in the balls.
Yeah, kick someone in the balls. Someone could get cold for a quarter. Like anything can happen. That's what makes the play-in game so exciting. So yeah, we'll be back very shortly. Enjoy this next week of NBA as standings change for anyone who keeps a close eye on that. But yeah, we'll speak to you guys very soon.
Look out for our graphic. See you, mate.
Yes, look out for the graphic.
Thanks again, guys. Thanks again. It's been awesome.
Thanks for listening. Speak soon.